Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
Hi, folks. We'll get started in just a minute. People are filing in as we speak. Evan and Michael, I'll give it a couple of minutes and we'll kick off, okay? Since folks are showing up on time, I don't want to leave them hanging.
Sounds good.
I see some people who have been with us every session. That's good. Glad to see that. One minute, I'm going to start, guys, so hang tight. Good morning, Jennifer. Well, why don't we start and end the awkward silence? So, to introduce me, myself to the group, I'm Harold Sloves. I am a consultant with the Division of Developmental Disabilities. My role is to help communicate, educate, and promote the use of remote supports and enabling technology for people in your waiver environments as a way to reduce dependence on paid staff and help people achieve a more self-determined life. I've been at this for a while in Tennessee, where I was the director of our Division of Program Innovation. Night Owl was one of the first companies we brought into Tennessee to talk to us and teach us, quite frankly. And that's because Chris, who won't be with us today due to other competing priorities, have a national footprint and provide these services in multiple states. So we thought it was important to bring that depth of information and knowledge to us as we in Tennessee were preparing to move forward. In any case, you're in the able hands of Michael Doucette, who is Night Owl's Director of Development. And without further ado, Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Harold. Hi, everybody. I'm sure I've probably met or been in meetings with some of you in the past. I've been working with some groups in Alabama for seems like maybe a year and a half now. So it's good to see some names I recognize and some new names as well. I'm going to pull up a presentation. Let me know if you're able, or let me know if anyone's not able, I guess, to see this screen. But I'm showing the title screen here to get into the presentation. In terms of questions, feel free to put questions in the chat. If you've got, and maybe that's exactly what, oh, yeah, perfect. Harrison putting something in the chat just as I mentioned it. Thanks, Harrison. But put all your questions into the chat. And if if there's a good amount of questions while we're going through, we'll find a good place to stop and discuss something. I don't like to quell the possibility of constructive conversations during this presentation. We could go more in depth in a certain piece of it, or just kind of get through the end and discuss questions from there. But with that said, I want to get started. A title screen is usually just a title screen, but I like to spend at least 10, 20 seconds talking about that tagline. We're talking with all of these webinars about enabling technology and the help that it can bring. For us, we're definitely going to talk about technology, but it's much more than that. Remote supports is a lot more pieces than just the technology. In fact, we don't even really consider ourselves a technology company at the end of most days. We like to say we're a human services company that utilizes technology to accomplish what we need to. So if you could keep that in mind as we go through, there's going to be some talk about tech, but there's going to be other pieces as well that we go into detail on. All right, make sure I can actually get to the next slide. Perfect. I want to give you some brief introduction on us as a company. Again, some of you might be familiar with us, but for those who aren't, we are Night Owl Support Systems. We've been a remote supports vendor based out of Madison, Wisconsin for over 20 years at this point. The three faces you see there, there's Danny Chilson on the top, Dwayne Temple on the bottom left, and then Chris Patterson on the bottom right. He, again, as Harold mentioned, he was going to join me, but had an emergency that took him away. These are the three owners and founders of Night Owl. They were originally part of a program at the University of Wisconsin here at the Weissman Center, which is the USED here, as well as an outreach and research center at the university. But that program was really the first of its kind that offered any service that was really remotely close to remote supports as it is today. And between the three of them, they have over 90 years of experience working with people with disabilities. Our admin team has over 200 years of experience working with people with disabilities. I don't bring that up to brag or anything, but just to say that we're not some Silicon Valley group. We're not some group that developed the technology and thought, hey, let's get rich quick by entering into this industry. Everything we do is from a place of passion and experience. Academics, professional, even to family members. Chris's sister was one of the first people we supported. I've got two brothers with learning disabilities. Everyone here is really focused on the goal, which is improving outcomes and increasing independence for people with disabilities. Our mission is a lot of the same. We want to creatively use the technology that we have at our disposal to allow people to live with more independence. Independence is always going to be the number one goal, always has been, it always will be. Again, we feel that every person, regardless of their capabilities and cognition and disabilities or what have you, should experience independence to the fullest extent that their life allows them to. If independence is always going to be number one, 1A is safety and security. You can't truly be independent if you're not also living safely and securely at the same time. So we'll go over some ways that we make sure that that happens as well. And then lastly, it's easy to think with a remote service or using assistive tech or using remote supports that relationships really go out the window, especially ones that individuals make with maybe some caregivers that are in their home. We found that frankly that's not the case. We've been able to build some really strong relationships with some of the people we supported for years, so sometimes over 20, sometimes over 15 years. These aren't even stock photos. This is an individual we supported for years, and then on the left is Crystal, one of our longtime monitors. Crystal gets a call every day from one of the people we support that he wants to call in and tell her a joke. It's the same joke every day, but he gets to call in and talk to his favorite monitor. If she's not there, not on shift, he leaves a message and he's able to talk to someone else. So that's just one example of how we're still able to build some close relationships with the people that we support. All right, I'm going to take a step back here and talk about what remote supports really is. And before I do this, I do want to commend Alabama as a state. The people running the Department of Disabilities in terms of remote supports have really done a great job embracing what remote supports is really about. Again, that's the independence and trying to make it available for all individuals, all providers. We have to recommend Alabama. The people in charge, Harrison, Terry, everyone that's been a part of the things that we've been a part of. It's been great to see the support of service like this in a state. So just wanted to put that out there. And then again, I want to talk about what remote supports is. It's a new service to a lot of people. And so maybe there could be maybe not some confusion, but there's a lot of new services out there in general. So we wanted to come up with some terminology, some common terms here, some common sentences and definitions that we could really put to what remote support is. So remote support is a tech-based service that allows for trained remote support professionals, or RSPs as we like to call them, kind of the remote version of your DSPs. And they deliver live support from a remote location. Those RSPs, they're awake, alert, and they're only focused on providing remote supports while they're on shift. What does that mean? They're not doing anything else. They're focused on supporting the people that are in the homes we support. Remote support should always be selected by the individual and their team and incorporated into their service plan, and it is not intended as a wholesale substitute for in-home support. In fact, it should augment in-home support at providers, allowing staff to focus on situations and individuals that need their support the most. So with all of this information, when I get to this slide, I like to point out also that the word technology is only on here once. It's right in the very beginning, again, going back to that key kind of concept that remote supports isn't just about technology. Technology is really just the vehicle we use to get to where we need to be to support the people we do. We're going to go over it. We're going to go over all the other pieces as well, though, and just so you get a clear picture of what remote supports is and what the service is through Night Owl. All right. So with that said, I want to kind of dive into the pieces of remote supports. What makes our service what it is? This is where we've identified 4 other components other than technology to make 5 pieces of the pie here. Again, we're going to go over technology, but it is not the entire picture. All right. So first and foremost, I want to talk about our remote support professionals. These are what I like to call our day-to-day champions. These are the individuals that are supporting your folks on a minute-to-minute basis and communicating with them and their teams. These individuals go through the same trainings that direct in-home professionals and caregivers go through, everything from HIPAA and abuse and neglect all the way down to bloodborne pathogens and CPR and kind of in-person things like that as well. On top of that, many of our staff have actually been direct in-home staff as well, so it gives them just a little bit of common ground. But what these individuals use, they use what we call individualized protocols that we create for every single person we support that tells our staff what to do in certain situations. So there are devices that are in the homes we support that send notifications to our remote support professionals, and then they take the appropriate actions that are outlined in the protocol. Let me tell you a quick example of how that can work. So jumping ahead, but a very common device we put into homes is a door sensor. It's a very small device. It's very simple. It tells us if a door has been opened or not. For one person, maybe they're a smoker. Maybe they go out and have a cigarette. Maybe they like to hang out in the yard, and as long as they get back inside in a certain amount of time, maybe there's no action for our staff to take. However, for someone using that same device down the street, maybe their protocol says they get disoriented when they go outside, or they might be a minor elopement risk, or maybe there's someone in the neighborhood that comes by that shouldn't be. For whatever reason, that plan might tell our staff to take a different action. So those plans are loaded directly into the software that our remote support professionals use, so that when an alert comes in from a piece of technology, they know exactly what to do and who to reach out to right away. I'm going to leave the last 2 bullet points for later because we're going to talk about that, but our remote support professionals do work in our monitoring station, and if you can imagine, there's a lot of data going through that, so there's a lot of reporting and documentation capabilities as well. But to just wrap up for our RSPs, to kind of talk about what they actually do, what is their main job, they're responding again to those sensor alerts, and then reaching out, taking the appropriate action. On the flip side of that coin, they don't always have to wait for those sensors to send them notifications. They could proactively reach out as well. If we support someone who, maybe we know that they forget their lunch when they go to work in the morning, maybe they need help with some tasks. Maybe we know if there's a storm, or if the staff lets us know if something happened at work. We could be as proactive as needed, especially if we're given scripts, if we're given support and information in terms of how to do that the best way. We could proactively reach out and help individuals as well. And then lastly, they dispatch what we call responders, or boots on the ground individuals. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well later on in the presentation. All right, so our second component is a central monitoring station. This is where our remote support professionals work. This is a location that's here in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a secure facility with multiple redundancies, backup power generator, a duplicate phone and internet servers, even a secondary location if, knock on wood, anything catastrophic were to happen to this location. And all of those redundancies are important, especially because we've moved to 24/7, 365 operation. So for 18 plus years, we were night owls. We only supported people at night. That's the only time we did it. And I will say that the vast majority of people we still support are supported during the nighttime hours. However, when COVID came around, we knew that a lot of people weren't going to their day programs, weren't going to their jobs. Providers were having a hard time getting staff into people's homes. We decided it was the right time to expand hours. So it just offered some flexibility during the main part of the pandemic, and that's what we continue to offer now. Let's say you've got an individual that we support at night, and I'm hearing some noise. If you could mute your that would be seeing which one it would be. Okay, all right. But moving forward, I mentioned that we offer that flexibility. We offered it through COVID. I'll say that again, that is still what we continue to offer. So we're supporting someone during the nighttime hours, but during the day, maybe the staff that was scheduled for that home got COVID. Maybe you can't get in touch with their backup and you need us to monitor and support someone while you get someone over to the home. We could absolutely do that on the fly. Additional situations, maybe there's 2 out of 3 folks in a home that want to go to the bowling alley with the staff, but that third person, now living more independently, he's hated bowling his entire life and he doesn't want to go ever again. He could stay at the home and the staff could just let us know that he's leaving with some of the housemates and then returning at a certain time. So we could really help with flexibility and help with some of the day-to-day unforeseen challenges that providers come up against. All right, so those first 2 were really the remote side of remote supports. That's what's here in Wisconsin. That's really the remote piece of the pie. Next is the technology. This is really what's in the home of the people we support. I want to talk about some common features of our tech and then get into some common examples of technology we use in the homes that we support. First and foremost, I like to say that our technology is completely wireless or 99% wireless. I like to call it sensor-based, and I think that's kind of a twofold definition there. So first and foremost, most of our devices are wireless. Our devices tend to be smaller, kind of out of the way, kind of behind the scenes, because we feel that home should really feel like home even if there's technology in it. And the technology that we use tends to be there to support people if they need it. It's not there and on and in their face at all times. It's allowing them to live with some autonomy, live with some freedom, some independence, some dignity of risk. So we let them live, and then our devices are there really to support that. Also, think of your first VCR player. Tech has gotten smaller, less wires hanging around. Our devices have really followed that trend as well. The second part of that definition is that being sensor-based, or we really don't provide internal cameras within the homes we support. And these are cameras that are in common areas that are really meant to be monitoring or surveilling individuals at all times. That's, again, that for 20 plus years, we felt that kind of goes against the idea of privacy and dignity of risk for the individuals we support. Again, our devices tend to be more out of the way and there if you need it. But with that said, there are some devices out there that are camera equipped that we can integrate with, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we tend not to put cameras inside the home that we're going to constantly monitor. All right. And yep, is there ballpark ratios for RSPs? Let's take a little break before we get too deep into the technology. I think there's a question that, and I assume that's ratios of RSPs to people that we support. I'll say on average, it's one RSP to about 50 homes. But keep in mind that that doesn't mean they're doing 50 things at all times. So our tech, again, being kind of behind the scenes, uh, really it just sends us notifications when something happens with the technology in the home. If someone's sleeping through the night and not activating any of the devices, there's really no messages being sent to our RSPs. And I will say more like national kind of lifeline, life alert services, that's oftentimes one representative to above 1,000, 10,000 individuals. It's much more, it's a not as good ratio that we have for our RSPs. So I hope that answered the question. All right. So moving on with the technology, I mentioned, kind of our approach to it. I also mentioned redundancies with our central monitoring station. We have redundancies in our technology as well. We have battery backups in all our devices. We have cell card backups in our main panel. Anything were to happen with the main communication from the device or from the system. And we have tamper evident sensors as well. I always like to say tamper-proof doesn't exist. If someone wants to take a hammer to something, they're going to do it. They're probably going to cause some damage, but our sensors will know if that happens. And the great thing about all three of these redundancies is that the system does let us know when they're being used. So, which we feel is incredibly important. So here in Wisconsin, it gets cold. It gets really cold. There's a week every year where it's 20 below. It's just a fact of life. It's going to happen every year. It happened last year. It's going to happen this year. If we're supporting someone on that night, we get a notification that their devices are now using battery backup. It might not say it in their plan, but we know we need to make sure that they're safe, get someone over to the home, make sure that they've got heat, make sure that they're okay to sleep through the night at their house. So really, you could have a million redundancies. You get all the redundancies you want. You don't know when they're being used, it's not as efficient as it could be. Last couple points on our tech, we do offer two-way hands-free communication. That's audio communication. Again, kind of go into the fact that we don't have cameras in the home. However, there are, again, capabilities or options to do video communication, and I'll get into that on the next slide. Last thing on the technology, our tech is what we like to say portable and adaptable. What does that mean? Portability, that's kind of more straightforward. If someone likes to use our system, they like our services, and they move to a new location, it's very easy for our devices to move with them. There are no big construction costs. There's going to be no big gaping holes in the wall left behind, no upset landlords or anything like that. Oftentimes, the biggest alteration to a home is drilling in a smoke detector into the ceiling, and that's it. And sometimes we could even avoid that with command strips or something else. So our system is made to be portable and to move around with it. Lastly, our system is what we call adaptable as well. We're going to try and get it right from the very beginning. We're going to try and choose the devices that we think working with the person's team, that person needs in their home to help support them and be independent. But we might need to make changes after going live. And so we've set up our system so that there's no long-term packages. You don't get the gold package and the silver package, and you're stuck with that. If we need to make changes, we could take devices out, put different devices back in. We could change where they are. We could change what they do. Maybe we just want to track behavior, but we don't want to do anything about it just yet. We can make different changes in the tech there as well. So with all that said, it's just showcasing some more flexibility with our technology. All right, get back to the presentation and the next slide. So we're going to go over some of the technology, some of the devices that we put into home. This is not a full list by any stretch of the imagination. Just going to do a time check. Perfect. But this is just more of the common devices we see ourselves putting into homes. So first and foremost, the first two are in essentially every home we support. The two-way communication panel that offers the two-way audio communication. More importantly, it's the hub of the system. All the other devices talk to the panel, and then the panel talks to us. That's why it's in every home. Smoke detectors, we're going to assume that your homes already have them, and we don't want you to do anything to them. keep them in place, keep them operable. We usually add one of our smoke detectors as well because our smoke detectors are connected to our panel. And so we'll know immediately with smoke and fire situations if something were to happen. From there, again, just some common devices. I mentioned the door sensor already. Our door and window sensors are very small devices that tell us if the door or window has been opened, used for security, again, minor elopement issues, things like that. Bed and movement sensors, these are really, really cool devices. It incorporates a thin sheet of plastic that goes under the mattress. So not under the sheets, under the mattress. So there's no Princess and the Pea situation, if you will. No sleeping on lumps or anything uncomfortable like that. But there's two different versions of this sensor. The bed version will tell us if someone's been out of bed for a certain amount of time. And then the movement version will let us know if the pad senses movement in the bed akin to an event like a seizure, specifically like a grand mal type seizure with tremors and body movement. And it's really, really useful in the right situations. Seizures are extremely difficult, even with staff in the home. So the staff is on the other side of the house. Maybe the person's not hollering out. Maybe it could be hard to know if it's happening. Our sensor will know pretty much immediately if that grand mal type seizure behavior is sensed. From there, we have personal pagers. I like to call these our get our attention buttons. It's really just a very simple device, very small tactile button that you can press to get our attention for whatever reason. Maybe a person needs help with a task. Maybe there's a storm and they're scared. Maybe, again, they want to call in and just tell us a joke. These pagers are there for the people to use for whatever reason. Reach out to us, and then we can reach out. The big red square button on the bottom of the screen, that's really an adaptable version of that pager. It's easier to press. It's for people who tend to have less mobility or dexterity. You could hit it with an elbow, hit with a foot. It's again just an adaptable version of our personal pagers. From there, we have motion detectors, fall sensors, flood and moisture sensors. That's the little disc on the right. Put that next to the sink or toilet if you have someone that's prone to clog those appliances, and you might know if something's happening a little earlier. It's not going to turn off the water, but it will alert us to something happening. Potentially, you could avoid maybe some long-term water damage. The last two, I want to spend just a little extra time. So the first one is the Smart Med Dispenser. That's the third picture from the left. Some of you might be familiar with this device. It's from a company called Dose Health. It's the Dose Health Flip, and we've worked with Dose to incorporate this device into our services. So what this device is, if you're not familiar, it's kind of hard to see on the picture there. It's the third one from the left with the circular device with the blue rectangular screen. On top of that device is a clear plastic case that can be locked and unlocked by your staff. And then in those compartments go medications. And then you program in when it's time to take each of their medications. When it's time to take the meds, this device, it's going to chime, it's going to give them notifications, it's going to let them know it's time for their meds. But then those notifications are also sent into us, and we can help with some reminders. So if we've seen that it has been 15 minutes since the scheduled medication time, that's often the grace period that's given, and we see that it still hasn't been taken, we can reach out to the individual and help them with a reminder. This device, it doesn't have a camera on it. It's not going to check if someone cheeks the pill instead of swallows it. It's not going to make any changes to anyone's MAR, but it's a really good device for someone who might be at the point of working towards self-administration, but might need some reminders at this stage. So again, it's just a really useful device for some of the people we support. Some individuals only have this device and nothing else because they're really, they've worked to become super independent, and now this is the next goal that they're working on. So a really useful device. Last thing on this tech slide, and then I see there's a chat, so we'll get to that as well. Last thing is optional assistive tech. I mentioned on the last slide that we don't provide internal cameras to constantly monitor individuals. It's a policy of ours. It's sometimes cameras are used in remote supports. We just feel that it impacts privacy too much for us to use. However, there are other devices out there that have cameras equipped. And a great example of that is a Ring doorbell. I think everyone knows what a Ring doorbell is these days, but if you don't, it's a doorbell with a camera attached to it. Uh, we support a lot of homes where there are Ring doorbells on the home. We don't necessarily supply them, but that Ring doorbell camera feed can be shared with our remote support professionals, with our RSPs. So now going back to that door sensor example, we could have an extra layer to see what's going on. We get a door sensor notification that the door's been opened and we know the home has a Ring doorbell. We can access that video feed and see what's going on. See, yep, they're out there having a cigarette, everything looks fine, or I don't see anybody, or I see something that I shouldn't be seeing. So, and then take a different action from there. Another example is an Amazon Echo Show. I like to say that it's a small TV with Amazon's Alexa product in it. The key point for this device is it offers two-way video communication, kind of FaceTime, a little bit like what we're doing right now. If someone has that device and likes to talk via FaceTime, we can communicate with that device as well. If someone likes to use their cell phone, likes to text, likes to do FaceTime through that, we can support that as well. Basically, this is to say that while we don't provide cameras, we will always investigate incorporating a camera-equipped device into someone's plan if it makes sense. And I hope that makes sense. All right, let's look at the questions. Are you also utilizing DoseHealth's mobile med dispenser? This is the only device that we've utilized through Dose. This device, though, it doesn't need to stay in the home. We've supported individuals that we know have taken it to work, taken it to their day programs. As long as it has connectivity, it's a useful device. So can we now implement these services? We tried in January, we were told it was not ready. That is, as far as we know, yes, we're actually supporting an individual in the state of Alabama. We're supporting someone with VOA at this point. So that is a solid yes. And, I think probably the best person to go to, or the best place to go to, is the state itself. But I know it incorporates, an assessment that goes through some of the service coordinators. It also depends on I think it depends on which waiver they're in. But we are approved through all of the waivers, all three of the DD waivers. Harold, go ahead.
Thank you, Michael. Just to amplify what you were already saying, yes, you can pursue these technology options through the waiver. I think that one of the things we're trying to accomplish by virtue of these webinars, and one that will be a concluding webinar where I'll be sharing an upcoming request for applications for transformation to technology first. We're going to have written guidelines in terms of process. I think that has created a little bit of uncertainty about how to proceed. So very soon there will be written guidelines to talk about, and just to be really, really vigilant about this terminology, it's got to be person-centered. We want to be really, really clear and diligent that that is the process by which we're going to proceed in Alabama and elsewhere. It means that when we are considering technology, it's really all about the person's aspirations, their desired outcomes. We're going to be supplying some new material to help you get through the process. And I'm sorry, Michael, I'm going to stop in just 1 second, which is going to include a screening tool to help providers and support coordinators identify people who are ready to go. One of the things we are trying to avoid is convincing people and persuading people. And sometimes that's also a matter of family concerns and things of that nature. So there's going to be more guidance forthcoming. So the short answer is Michael's, it's a yes. The long answer is more information is forthcoming to help with the process. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Harold. Yeah, and in the meantime, Chris, if you wanna chat while we're waiting on some of those new pieces of guidance, feel free to connect. But I absolutely agree with everything Harold said in terms of the person-centered approach. that's something that also we maintain and we've maintained through our history. Approaching remote supports, using remote supports has to be person-centered. It truly does, because there
Yeah,
is not one
we
size fits all. So
we have several people that are semi-independent now and basically just using a phone system. So we were very excited when this technology was finally being made available. And so that had already been approved, and we thought this would be very easy to get approved as well. But it hasn't been.
well, Chris, we could discuss some of the issues that we've seen. Again, we support someone already. Harold, I don't know.
Yeah, Chris.
It doesn't matter. We're just going to start over. I just wanted to make sure it's available.
Well, and Chris, at some point in the near future, if you'd like to interact with me, I can perhaps offer some guidance to help get you going a little bit more efficiently. I understand what you're saying, but I think we're approaching a new period of readiness to go forward in Alabama, if that makes any sense to you.
Sure.
Very good. I'll put my email address in the chat at some point in case anybody wants to get a hold of me.
Thanks, Harold, and thanks, Chris, for that. That's an important question. Thanks. All right, so that's really the snapshot on technology. Again, moving forward, we've gone through already the remote side of things. We have our remote support professionals that work in our central monitoring station, and we have the tech that's in the home. The fourth piece is where the providers of Alabama come. This is really the piece that we call the responder piece. It is the boots on the ground individuals that we can call and we can direct over to the home if the situation calls for it. There's always going to be potential for that. So this is something that we no doubt need to identify before we begin services with anybody. We're going to look for information of who they are, where they are, when we need to get in touch with them, how to get in touch with them, and who their backups are. So who they are tends to be provider employees in certain situations, depending on policy and regulations. It can be natural support. It usually tends to be an employee of the residential provider the person is working with. And where they are is actually one of the more important pieces that we discuss with individuals' teams. Knowing that this person that we could call to get over to the home for certain situations, knowing that whether they're across the street or on the other side of a duplex wall versus are they 25 to 35 minutes down the road, that will affect how we can support individuals and whether someone might be a good fit for the service with us. So we're gonna have discussions with you. We're gonna talk about, after hearing some of the situations that are happening in the home, hearing some information about the individual themselves, we're gonna then have some ideas of how what we think the responder should be, where they should be, who they should be. We could help you with that as well. I'm jumping down to the bottom. Responder arrangements. We here in Wisconsin, we provide some of these individuals, but only in our home county. We're not even allowed to do it in the rest of the state. But really what that gives us is some common information, some common knowledge, some experience to help providers with questions about who should be the right people for this, what does scheduling look like, what are some options for this individual. And the last thing I'll say is that we can get very personalized and customized with this piece of the service. And I see that there's a chat there, so I'm going to get through this example and hopefully address that. So I want to tell a quick example of how we could get very personalized and customized with working with responders. So we supported an individual for years who had severe mobility issues, needed to be repositioned several times through the night. And other than that, he really slept through the night. He didn't need a ton of traditional support other than that repositioning every 2 hours. Well, so we decided with his team that remote supports was a good option. We started supporting this individual, but before that, we knew his repositionings needed to happen on time. So we decided on a plan that we put a door sensor on his bedroom door. And if we didn't get a notification on that door sensor within 15 minutes of his repositioning times, we would reach out to the responder, and the responder would then reach out to that medical staff. In the beginning, it was business as usual. A lot of repositions were missed. We gave a lot of reminders. Over time, those reminders went down. And eventually, he went into the hospital for an unrelated issue. And a report came back from a nurse on his team that his skin had not been as clear of bed sores in over 5 years. If you've ever worked with bed sores, that's an extremely positive outcome. All that we did, all that we changed is that we took traditional staff out of the home and we put in a reminder system, a kind of a customized approach to working with the staff to make sure that he got repositioned. So it's a really good example. I bring it up all the time because it really does illustrate, one, how we could work with responders and get creative and flexible, but two, that person might not be the type of individual you would think is the first candidate for remote supports, but we've supported him for years and individuals just like him as well. All right, I'm gonna look at the chat, and that's just Harold. That's Harold's email. Perfect. So let's move on. All right, so that was really the responder piece. Any questions on that? Again, we could get into more detail on how to maybe approach it with your provider and your organization. Another question here, does Night Owl also work with providers who have their own remote DSPs? That I assume that means kind of having some provider personnel do the role of our RSPs, the remote monitoring. That's a program that we don't currently provide, don't offer. And we know that there's maybe some services out there that do that. Yep, like our RSPs, yeah. We don't do that. We feel that there's a lot of hidden costs, unseen costs to running your own central monitoring station and making sure it's as efficient as it could be. There's a lot of training, there's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of redundancies. There's a lot more that goes into it, and we found that we could probably support individuals a little bit more securely, knowing that your DSPs, again, they do care for the individuals and they do a great job. We found that probably the cost of maintaining that central monitoring station, that place where they work, and everything involved, is probably going to be too high and provide or be kind of filled with traps that maybe providers they shouldn't be worrying themselves with. So that's a service that we do not provide. All right, moving on to the last component. This is the last piece of our services, and then we have a couple closing slides as well. Our consumer relations team, this is really the most important piece of it all, if you ask me. The other pieces so far, we have a remote side with the remote support professionals in our central monitoring station. We have the tech that's in the home. We have the boots on the ground individuals if someone needs to go to the home. If you don't have a group that's making sure that all of these services, all of these pieces of the pie are working together, you could end up in some trouble. So that's where the consumer relations team comes in. They really do handle the ongoing evaluation of services. I apologize, they just started mowing the lawn outside our window, so if you hear that, I'll try to speak up as they get closer. But with that said, this team really does stay with you and hold your hand throughout the whole process. So this is the team that works with you from the very beginning to create that personalized, individualized protocol that I mentioned that tells our staff what to do. This is the team that helps you make changes to the technology. I mentioned the tech is adaptable. If we need to make changes to what tech we're using, where they're being used, what the tech's doing, this is the team that helps you through that process. And then any information that really should come to a person's team, reports on events, maybe just identifying situations that are different from what we expected. Maybe we were told someone gets up at a certain time, but we have noticed over the last couple of weeks that a person's starting to get up at a different time. Maybe they're leaving for work and it's still dark. Is that a sign of dementia? Is it a sign of change of behavior? All of this stuff is information that we feel a person's team should really know. So this is the team that makes sure that everything is moving together smoothly, especially in the beginning. We understand we've been doing this for 20 years, but it's brand new for almost every person that we support. So them and their team, they need to know that things are working and that we're there to support them. And this team really does a great job of getting that information over to them, staying in constant contact with them, and then moving forward with that person throughout the life cycle of them using our services. I can't speak highly enough to the work that this team does. It really is the piece that really makes our service. All right. Sorry, I love talking, but if I do, I need to take a drink every once in a while. Last couple slides after going over all of the pieces of the pie. The first one here is going over opportunities where we've seen remote supports work. This is, again, not a full list, just some common examples, common situations where we know that it's worked in the past. The first two are pretty self-explanatory. If someone has already had alone time, they're already pretty independent, that's a great place to start, especially if that alone time has proved to be very successful. And then overnight staff. If anyone, whether the staff is asleep or awake, we've been supporting people overnight for our entire existence for over 20 plus years. And there's only been 2 situations where we've replaced a sleep staff specifically for overnight shifts, and it hadn't worked out. So overnight shifts, overnight time is really, really tailor-made for using supports. From there, independent seekers, anyone that might express a desire for more independence. Those individuals are out there. The key with this is finding who those are. You might have to talk with your individuals, might have to, maybe talk with your care teams, your DSPs, your area managers, your home supervisors to find who those people are. Maybe that they had a brother or sister that just got married. Maybe someone moved out. Maybe they just want less staff in their home. Maybe it's as simple as that. For whatever reason, there are individuals out there that have expressed a desire for more independence, more freedom in their lives. From there, any teams or families that have been accepting of change in the past. So any families that have, whether it's a change in schedule, a change in personnel, change in services, and they've really understood it. They know that there's a lot that you're going through. They appreciate the help that you're providing for their family members and their loved ones. If they've been really accepting of it, that could be a good place to start, because then you could use that into that person's team and their family as kind of a resource to help talk with other teams and families to help them feel better about using the service. Having champions throughout your organization that really know the benefits of using this service is key in terms of getting buy-in like that. And then lastly, geographic proximity. This is kind of speaking to the responder piece. So if you have a few homes that are kind of clustered together, whether it's a couple homes on a cul-de-sac, maybe a duplex, so you got both sides, or even an apartment complex, you could really get some efficiencies with the responder piece. You could have one responder in a central location, really be that boots on the ground individual for not just one home, but all the people and homes and units in that area. So really that's something in some states that we've done a good amount of. It really just builds on the efficiencies that you can get through a service like this. Apart from this, Harold did mention that there's going to be an assessment tool or a screening tool, and I'm going to let him give you information when that's ready. So that'll kind of go into kind of helping to identify opportunities. But I'll say that for us, we support people that have checked off a couple of these boxes, and we've supported people that have checked off none of these boxes. One size does not fit all. We've supported individuals with a wide range of situations. So if you have someone in mind, if you're on the fence, if you're just curious, reach out. We could have a no pressure discussion. We could just talk. We could see if that person might be a good fit for our service or for a service like remote supports. You could get our opinion on it. We're going to be the first ones to tell you if we don't think someone's right for our services. The last thing we want to do is get into someone's home, put stuff in there, provide them with this other service, and their outcomes are affected negatively. And their life isn't as good as it was before. So we're going to be the first ones to tell you that. So reach out, have a discussion. Let's talk about it. Harold, I got one more slide. I saw that you were off mute. Did you want to talk to that aspect, or am I good to move forward?
Just briefly, and then I'll be quiet, Michael. Just to add a bit of further clarity to what you were speaking of. And also responding to something that Chris mentioned earlier. For some people, it is a move toward independence, as Chris talked about, some folks at his organization who are already semi-independent. But I really want to also emphasize that this is not an all or nothing thing. I prefer using the phrase reduce dependence because it allows a continuum of change for people as they go through their own growth and realizing their outcomes. And secondly, this is an internal organizational issue that some of you will have to grapple with, and that is, this is a complementary relationship with DSPs. Again, it's not an all or nothing. There is an interrelatedness. This isn't about taking away jobs. It's really about changing jobs and changing relationships, and that DSPs are there when they're wanted and needed. So I just wanted to add some shades of gray to the process to hopefully offer some clarity. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thanks, Harold. All right, last meaningful slide here, and I'm not going to go into great detail with this because this is really the process once it comes to us and maybe further down the line. But just want to highlight a few things in terms of our process that we try to make sure happens. I mentioned before, if you're curious about someone, reach out. Let's have a conversation. That's really how the process starts with us in almost every case. Reach out to us. We're going to have what we like to call a discovery meeting. Even if whatever changes happen to the process in Alabama, we'll find a way to fit in meetings that we need to get information to see if it's a good fit, if we want to move forward. We need to have one discussion. Two, we are here to have as many conversations as needed. From there, if we feel like it's a good move moving forward, we have a referral process on our side that gets us some information, but the biggest piece is really scheduling an intake meeting. That's the meeting with the consumer relations team that really gets into the nitty gritty, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, what devices are where, what are they doing, how are we reacting? And from there, we're installing the system and we're beginning services. Services can begin with us a variety of different ways. We could pull the Band-Aid off and remove staff from the home for a certain shift and begin services. We could have staff continue to be in the home for a certain amount of time, have a little bit of a soft go live, and then creative ways to start in between. So really, we could be flexible in terms of how you feel it might be best to start services with an individual. Last thing I'll say is that in that little box there, we could help in a lot of other ways. Harold mentioned it before that families and guardians can sometimes be maybe the last people to convince, the last people to have conversations with, to do anything new, whether it's this, whether it has technology involved or what have you. Feel free to pull us into any one-on-one conversations, any larger conversations, groups of families and guardians. We have conversations with those groups all the time, and we get it. We're families and guardians ourselves. We understand that their concerns are legitimate, and we want to make sure that we could help providers alleviate any concerns that they might be feeling from families, guardians, things like that. And that's pretty much it. This kind of goes back to what Harold said as well, where everything has to be person-centered. At the center of these things that we do is not some big hunking piece of technology. It's not a computer. It's not a sensor. It's not a med dispenser. It's a person. So the person that we support affects everything we do, from the protocol we create, even how we install the devices and start the services. So with that said, if I'm going to leave this up here, this has our information. This is our info email that'll go straight to us if you have any questions. I'll leave this up for just a little bit so you could get that email. But with that said, and that's kind of a fire hose method of giving you some information all at once. With that said, what additional questions do you have?
Michael, first of all, thank you. We all appreciate it. I said thank you, Chris, earlier. I meant thank you, Michael, too.
I'll pass the thanks on to Chris.
I would like to just throw out one small detail because, again, Chris raised the issue of process and getting through it. One of the things we're going to also be sharing and communicating is a self-medication assessment. And my point is, Michael was talking about the Dose Health medication dispenser system. It prompted me to let this group know that there will be a way to vet that person's readiness to proceed with self-medication through any dispenser system. Let me say that. One of the lessons from Tennessee, which does not mean it's going to happen in Alabama, but a variety of medication dispenser systems were very, very popular with providers. And there's a whole host of reasons, aside from allowing people to have more control over their healthcare and their health. Also during the pandemic, it was perhaps impossible to get staff med certified, and also to have staff to be there when people needed medication. So there were a lot of reasons, including a lot of people are just ready to do it. So Michael, your commentary about the Dose Health system reminded me that we'll also be putting forth some further documentation to help people and providers.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, I hogged up too much time. This is Q&A time. You've got 4.5 minutes. Anybody?
And if no questions now, again, feel free to send them via email, send them to Harold, and he'll get them to us.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot for listening.
Okay, if there is nothing further, I want to thank everybody for being here. We have a couple of more of these sessions coming this week. And then in the near future, we'll be talking about the transformation project to become a technology first provider. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Michael. Oh, we have one more. Oh, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you, Kenya.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Michael, thank you.
No problem, Harold. Thanks for including us.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Devin.
Have a good one.
You too.